Hi, welcome to educator.com. This lesson is an introduction to the XML language. In this lesson, we'll be taking a look at the meaning and purpose of XML. We'll take a look at the nature of markup and the technologies from which XML sprung, and take a look at some basic XML concepts as far as how an XML file is put together. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It was created by the World Wide Web Consortium, the folks who gave you HTML and other web technologies, based on previous work done in the markup of documents. It's meant as an adjunct to HTML, the idea being that you can use XML to extend the capabilities of web documents. If you'd like to take a brief look at XML in action, you need go no further than the very web page that you're looking at. Your browser somewhere will allow you to take a look at the source code of the page, and you'll see something that looks like this. Up here we see the word XML here. This is referring to something called an XML namespace, and the entire page is written in an XML document type known as XHTML, which is an XML version of the web page language HTML that we'll be talking about in a later lesson. The idea of XML expanding the capabilities of the web can be seen in this profile attribute. This is actually a URL to a site you can take a look at for defining extra attribute values for HTML, and if you don't know what that means, you will before the end of this course. And the XFN stands for the XML Friends Network, giving you the ability to use certain aspects of HTML to describe human relationships. And the idea that you can do this with a web language is one of the legacies of the XML development. XML seeks to expand the possibilities of the web by creating a more restricted syntax of a web markup language, making it easier to program for, and thus inviting programmers to create more diverse and capable programs. Before we go any further, let's take a look at exactly what we mean by markup. Now let's suppose that I'm not a computer person. Let's suppose I run a restaurant, and I decide it's time for me to reprint some menus. I've added some new items. I'd like to get my menus done up right. Now, I am a restaurant owner. I'm not a print layout specialist. So all I know is what I want on the menu, and I have some idea of how I'd like it to look. So I hire a professional printer, and I'll give them the information on my menu right here. And I might give them some instructions as to how exactly I want it to look. For example, I might say that I want the menu word at the top of the header there to be big and cursive. Now, I'll leave them a little note on my mock-up of my menu saying I want that big and cursive. And I'll say that I want this to be a list with bullet points, fancy bullet points. And then here, I might say that this fine print is going to be small and italic, let's say. So what I would do is I would give this to the printer, and I would let them make the decisions about what exactly to do with it. Now, there's a separation here. There's the content, the actual information that goes in the menu, and then here's what I've marked up. Information that's not really supposed to appear in the final product, but offers some guidelines as to how the final product is supposed to be handled. What I expect to get back is something that looks a little bit like this. Okay, here's my big cursive menu heading. Here's my fancy bullet points. Here's my small italic fine print. What I don't expect to get back is something like this, which includes my content as well as my markup. Okay, here's my content. This is the markup, and it somehow ended up in my final product. Okay, here's my markup. That's not supposed to be there. Now, obviously, it's very doubtful that any professional human printer would make this kind of mistake, But it's the sort of mistake that a computer is very capable of making. And it's due to the nature of computer information that we'll be going over. But it gives us some idea of the nature of markup. It creates different sections of a document so that we can provide different instructions as to how to deal with them. Here is the same menu example. It's got exactly the same content, but now I've included some XML markup. And I've done it in kind of the way the computer would see it, in a linear fashion. And in this slide, I've changed the layout of the XML in order that it's a little bit more human readable. It's one of the big features of XML is that not only can a computer process the information in a document, but a human can read it pretty easily as well. So here's my XML document. The whole thing would be called a document. These items here are known as tags. And if I take the tags and whatever's between them, I have what's called an element. So what I've done is I've used markup here, and we'll go over this in detail in a future lesson. I've used it to set apart different parts of the document so that they can be identified. So what I could do then is I could provide instructions. I could say I would like the heading, meaning this part here, to be big and cursive. I would like the menu items to have bullet points, and I'd like the fine print to be small and italic. This way, if I'm dealing with some kind of computer styling program, it can apply those instructions. But another feature of this is that I could write a program that extracts the menu items and perhaps outputs them to some kind of online menu repository, like a restaurant review site perhaps, so that if someone were looking at my restaurant, they could immediately see what types of items are on my menu, and that could be extracted from the data because it's been set apart by the markup. So again, XML is a document with elements that are set apart by tags. So in this lesson, we've learned that XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. We've learned just what markup is, and we've learned that XML consists of a document put together with elements that are set apart by tags. Thank you for visiting educator.com.